Well, welcome to the AARP Arizona Community Education. This is a volunteer-led program offered by AARP Arizona that offers basic conversations on topics of interest such as Social Security, Medicare, fraud, caregiving, finances, and more. I'm Jerry Waterworth, a volunteer coordinator of the program, and with me today are some of our volunteer speakers, including Linda, Steve, Gary, Joyce, and Rob. Today, we want to introduce and talk further about the Fraud Watch Network, an effort by AARP to provide information on fraud and fraud prevention. And in this series, we will cover scams related to COVID-19, identity theft, Con Artist Playbook, how scams and fraud begin, prevention strategies, and resources to get help. In today's video, we want to focus on scams specifically related to COVID-19. And this is part 2 of a 2-part discussion on COVID-related fraud. And our speaker today is Linda Vitale, a regular speaker and writer on fraud-related topics. With that, Linda, take it away.
Welcome, everybody. I just want to say I'm glad you're all with us today. I hope you watched part 1. This is part 2 of coronavirus scams that we're going to discuss today. I just want to preface before we get into the scams themselves, is that, you should know that criminals are leveraging this pandemic to their advantage. They're exploiting our fears, our uncertainty, our social isolation, and then using those heightened emotions and anxieties to make us manipulate us more. And when you're in a heightened emotional state, you are much more easily manipulated and deceived. So you really have to be very careful and be on extra guard since the pandemic has begun. And just to give you a little idea of how bad things have gotten since the coronavirus began, a couple of little points to make, and that is that 20 million websites have been created since coronavirus pandemic began, and those websites usually have the name coronavirus or COVID in them. Some of them have CDC in them, things like that. They're all traps to get you to click on their website. So be very careful where you click. The other thing is Google is reporting that they are blocking an average of 18 million phishing emails per day. So just so that you have an idea of how bad things are getting out there and why we're doing this. The FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, has reported that since the pandemic began, since January, they have had over 91,000 complaints, and consumers have been losing millions of dollars. So this is serious, and it is important that you learn, what you need to do to protect yourself.
Right. Well, thanks for that overview, Linda. Can you go into some of the common COVID-related scams that we're seeing out there?
Yes. Well, one of them right now, especially in the hot summer, is that we're looking at utility shutoff scams. That is where a fraudster will prey on your fears, and they will contact you and tell you that, your bill is unpaid or it's delinquent, and scare you to death that, if you don't pay up right now, your electricity will be shut off. And so basically it's a fear tactic, and you don't, obviously most people are not going to want their electricity shut off in the middle of the hot summer. This is also done in the winter as well, by the way, and they will demand immediate payment. And the idea there is to just basically try to scare you into giving them your credit card information. So I would just say that if you do get something like that and you're not sure if your bill got paid or if your check arrived, just call up the company and find out if you're up to date on your payment. That's just the easiest way to know, rather than clicking on links and emails and things like that.
Right.
All right. The other one that I want to talk about is the grandparent scam, which is also known as the friends and family scam as well. It started out being grandparents because that was mostly when the scam began. It was mostly people getting phone calls from their supposed grandchild. Now it's being done with friends and other family members as well, where you are contacted by that person, whether they're a grandchild or a family member or a friend, basically where that person that's contacting you is in some sort of crisis situation. And of course, what are they doing? They're asking you for money to help them out of a jam. So, in that case, they need the money right away. They're going to ask you for that money, usually in the form of a gift card or one of these peer-to-peer money transfer programs or apps, or a bank wire, things like that. You need to verify before you send any money from an unsolicited phone call like that and find out if it's really true before you send any money at all. So just be careful and be aware of that one, especially now in the coronavirus. There's people calling or, texting and things that are basically are in need of money because right now everybody's in a crisis and people are in financial crunches and things like that. So, and they usually glean the information that they need to seem legitimate, usually from what you share on social media. So my advice is just be careful what you share on social media. The next one I want to cover is the sweetheart scam. A lot of people, even though we're at home, and maybe because we are more at home now, are going on to dating websites or social media meet websites. And, 1 in 4 older Americans are socially isolated. And, because of that, a lot of people are lonely, and that's why they're doing this. They're looking for just another voice, another person, another friend to talk to. So since the pandemic, this is just an increase in that sort of thing, and therefore an increase in that scam. Many victims are just searching for a friendly voice or a companion, and what they will do is try to gain your trust, try to get you off of that website and start talking to each other personally through email and text messages. And of course, ultimately, what they really want is they want you to give them money or personal information. Usually it's money they need. They have a crisis situation and they want you to send money. So just be very, very careful, especially if they get chummy way too soon. And then the last one, I've been hearing a lot of credit card charge scams right now. We're all using our credit cards a lot to do a lot of shopping for things because we're not able to go to the stores. So just be careful, because what's been happening, and it actually happened to me, was that I got a call from my credit card company trying to say that they are verifying a charge on my card. In the end, it was not really my credit card at all, but my number was spoofed to make it look like it was from my American Express card. And they basically said, we want to know if you made this charge, and if not, we will, reverse the charge, but we want to verify that it was you, and we need your credit card information, and we need your expiration date and your 3-digit number, et cetera, et cetera. So this is just a phishing phone call, just designed to get you to give them your credit card information. And many times they even have your credit card number from a prior data breach, but what they don't have is the 3-digit or 4-digit code, or they don't have the expiration date, and that's what they're phishing for. So be careful there, because I said, it happened to me, and what I did was I said, thank you very much, and I immediately called up the credit card company, only to find out that it was a fraudulent phone call. So, that's the idea with that one. So be very careful who you give your credit card information. And the advice there basically is just to make sure that you always go to the source rather than click on links or, in emails or text messages, and rather than giving information over the phone that is personal. Because as I say, most legitimate companies will never ask you for personal information in an email or a phone call. Especially if it was an unsolicited call. Obviously, if you made the call to the company, that's a different story. So that's pretty much it for today. There are plenty more scams out there, but those are the 4 that we have covered today, and we covered 4 in the prior program. So you might want to check that one out as well, because these scams are very, very prevalent right now in the coronavirus pandemic situation.
Right. Well, thank you, Linda. That's all very helpful information, but let's talk a little bit about prevention strategies. How do we prevent ourselves from becoming victims of fraud?
Yeah. Well, just be aware that 91% of all cybercrime is done, begins with some sort of phishing email. That's how prevalent phishing emails are. I know that for myself personally, I get dozens of them a day, and I know how to recognize them. There's many ways to recognize them. You can learn how to recognize them, because we don't have time to go into that today. We will talk briefly about a couple of things to how to recognize them. But there's a lot of ways. For example, in an email, you have, an email, phishing email usually contains some sort of message that it makes you want to or need to respond in some way. So you want to look out for words in those emails like confirm or verify or suspend or sign here, sign in here, put your password here, congratulations, you won, things like that are just prompting you to click on that link. So don't do that. Go straight to the source. Be wary of even text messages with similar things like that, and also words like confirmation and verification. Be wary of telephone calls. We're getting a lot of robocalls, a lot of telemarketers. So same thing. They're trying to fish for sensitive information. And if you didn't initiate the call, these are calls out of the blue that were unsolicited. Just don't give information to them. And, the most important thing, though, is not to click on links in emails or text messages or open up attachments, because a lot of them, most of them, I would say, contain tainted links that download what we call malware onto your computer. And if you get malware into your computer, that is bad news. Because what malware does is it is able to look at all the files on your computer and monitor your keystroke log. You can log your keystrokes as you go onto websites to put personal information there, like your credit card numbers, etc. So you don't want to get malware on your computer by downloading links that were contained in these tainted phishing emails and text messages. The other thing is I have some other prevention strategies here. And as you can see, because we can't mention it often enough, is never to click on links in emails or open attachments as well. That includes text messages. So what you should do instead is delete those emails and ignore those texts. Don't respond to them ever. And make sure that if you think it's a legitimate one, you always verify first before you respond. And as far as robocalls and telemarketing calls, same thing. You got to remember that they're using a tactic called spoofing, like they did to me in that credit card fraud scam, where they pretended that they were from American Express. Spoofing is a technology used by fraudsters to make it look like whatever they want you to see when you look at your phone and you look at your caller ID, who's calling you, is not necessarily who it really is. So be careful, even if it's a local number or if it's a name of a company that looks like it might be a legitimate company that you deal with. Always verify first. The other thing is to Use your credit card when you're shopping online, especially, rather than a debit card, because you have much more legal recourse using a credit card as opposed to when you use a debit card. You are responsible for more financial damages when using your debit card. The other thing is keep your devices secure. Make sure that you're doing updates on all of your software programs when you're prompted to do so, and back up your data often. Try to do it at least once a month. I want to remind you, please, to make sure that you are using strong and unique passwords on your important websites. When I say unique, I mean don't use your banking online password. Don't make it the same as your Facebook password or your Amazon password or other passwords. They should all be different and difficult to crack. The other thing is, I want you to try on most of these websites, the legitimate ones will offer you what is called two-factor authentication, 2FA. And what that means is you will have two ways to identify yourself to that particular vendor or company when you log on. So if your password gets compromised in some way during a prior data breach, then that fraudster still can't get into your account if you have two-factor authentication in place. Because what that means is they're not going to have that information because they're not going to have access to your email or your phone. And what a company will do in that case is they will text you a code to either your email address or your telephone so that you can do the next step that is required in order to get into your website. So it's highly recommended that you do so. And then the last thing there is public Wi-Fi. Make sure that you know that public Wi-Fi is not private and you don't want to do things on public Wi-Fi that involves you putting personal information onto your computer while you're on a website. And lastly, don't give any information, personal information that is unsolicited, even if it sounds like the person is legitimate. Always go directly to the source, and certainly if they're asking for money, don't send money in what seems to be suspicious ways like gift cards or prepaid credit cards or peer-to-peer money transfers like Venmo, or sending money with bank wires or giving them your bank account information so they can take the money directly out of your bank account. Those are all very suspicious. A lot of those are untraceable, and that is a preferred method that a fraudster wants to have their money sent to them. So be very, very careful there. As far as resources go, I highly recommend that you go to AARP's Fraud Watch Network. It is set up specifically for all the things that we're talking about today. It's got all the scams listed and red flags to look out for. There are videos to watch, material to read, a scam tracking map, ways to get help. It's all there, lots and lots of resources, so I highly recommend you visit that website. You can even sign up to receive fraud alerts as well. The other thing I would recommend is get your credit report. It's free if you go to annualcreditreport.com. It's a federally authorized website to get your free credit report, and right now all three credit bureaus are offering to let you actually get your credit report free weekly because of the coronavirus, to check your credit report weekly until April of next year. So take advantage of it. It's free and you might as well do it, because that is where you might discover that one of your accounts is compromised or you have an account that's been opened in your name that doesn't actually belong to you. The other thing is put yourself on the do not call list, because that will help eliminate a lot of telemarketing and robocalls. And as far as charity goes, be careful what charities you give to, and there's a great website called Charity Watch, and that one will help you look up a legitimate charity. A lot of fraudsters have charities that are in the names of things like veterans and children, seniors, things like that, disasters. You want to be careful. You want to look up a charity, make sure it's legitimate. If you go on that website, you can even find out if that charity, if the most of the money that they're collecting goes towards the people they're trying to help. And another little tip is if a charity calls you, always ask for their federal ID number, because if it's a fraudster, they're not going to want to give you their federal ID number. They may not even have a federal ID number. The other thing is the Federal Trade Commission has loads and loads of information. They have a tab on their website that is specific to all the coronavirus scams that are going on out there. Be careful of products that you're buying online, and make sure that you are really careful about hand sanitizers, because there's a lot of toxic hand sanitizers being sold right now online. And you can read about that on the FDA website and the Federal Trade Commission website. And lastly, another good source is the Arizona Attorney General's office that also has loads and loads of information for you to look at. And again, the motto for AARP is awareness is your best weapon against fraud. Knowledge is power, and the more you know and the more you're aware of these scams, the less chance you're going to fall victim to any of them. That's it for today.
All right, thank you, Linda. That's great information. We've learned about the scams that we're seeing out there, how to protect ourselves, and we've learned what resources are available to those who become victims of fraud. That's all very helpful, and I'd like to open it up to any of our volunteers. Does anybody have anything they would like to add? Any suggestions? Steve, go ahead, please.
Yeah, going back to the credit card, if your credit card has been compromised, your best bet is to make sure that you check your credit card statements every month, line per line, because a lot of times if your credit card has been compromised, you might see a charge of $1 on your credit card statement, and you might not think anything of it. But what the scammers are doing is they're testing it. They might have went to a gas station, bought $1 worth of gas just to see if that credit card is working. So even if you see a dollar amount that you're unaware of, make sure that you contact your credit card company and make them aware of your credit card might have been just compromised.
Right. That's good. Joyce, go ahead, please.
Yes, the other day I had an acquaintance call me about a blackmail scam, and they had received a phone call that said that they had some very dirty videos of this person, and that they were going to send it to their relatives, their friends, and whatnot. And I think this is a somewhat new coronavirus scam, and I think we should look into that a little bit further. I believe AARP had it on their network yesterday also.
Thank you. Gary?
Yeah, in reference to the credit thing, like I said earlier, when we had purchased some tape and then we found the $83 fraudulent charge on there. Well, we had to cancel that credit card. Problem was we had ordered a bunch of stuff from other companies on the same card. And then we sent it back. So the refund actually goes on your new card, but we didn't know that. We contacted the bank and they said not to worry about it because it was bought with the old card. And then the new card, the money refund went back to the new card. I would imagine most banks work that way. So you will get the money back if your card's compromised and you get a new one.
And Linda, did you have your hand up?
The only other thing I wanted to mention is that we're headed into political season. Well, we've been in political season, but we're getting closer to the election, and there are a lot of emails that are coming through from political organizations and PACs that are asking for money as well. So just be careful, because some of them could be fraudulent. If you really want to donate, go straight to that candidate or PAC's website and donate there rather than clicking on a link in an email.
Thank you. And Joyce, did you have something else?
Yes, I just wanted to add that on that pornography video that they're supposed to be sending out, that it is blackmail, and they will ask you for money or for a card or something like that. So I would beware. It's an upcoming scheme again. I guess they just like to bend as low as they can to get your money.
And so much of this seems to have increased during this time of COVID, and maybe because we're home more or emailing more, but I'm certainly getting more scam emails asking me to click on links. I get them from my bank. I have gotten them from other banks that I have no relationship with. So I know those are not valid. And certainly Social Security supposedly sending emails out where you click a link to validate certain information, and I would never do that. And of course, the phone calls, the IRS is putting a lien on your assets in your home and so forth, and that wouldn't happen either. So all things to be looking for at any time, but especially during this time of COVID and coronavirus, when we're home more and engaging more on social media, which is another source of some of this. So, well, thank you all for joining in this discussion today. Again, the Fraud Watch Network is only one of several topics covered by the community education program offered through AARP. So stay tuned for more information in this series on fraud-related topics, as well as additional videos on Medicare, Social Security, caregiving, and these topics are all useful for us as we age and as we prepare for our future security. Thanks to our volunteers today for your support and your contribution to this effort and into the making of this video. And please stay tuned to the AARP Arizona Facebook page for regular updates from the community education program. There's more to come, so thank you for joining us today.